I've been gardening for many years, and one lesson I learned the hard way is that not all cover crops are helpful. Some popular ones you see in garden centers, the ones with bright packaging and friendly recommendations, can actually harm your soil instead of helping it. I remember a few years back, I planted a large area with white mustard and winter rye. The seller assured me these were the best cover crops for improving soil fertility, and I trusted the advice. But the next spring, the results were shocking. My soil became hard as rock, its structure deteriorated, and pests multiplied like never before. I couldn't grow cabbage properly for 4 seasons. Carrots came out tiny and twisted, and my tomatoes suffered too. It took me 3 full years and a lot of effort, including adding lime, compost, and special soil treatments, to bring the land back to a healthy state. That experience taught me that soil is a living system, and choosing the wrong plants can disrupt it for years. Since then, I've become very careful about what I plant as cover crops. I check everything on my own plots and rely only on what has proven to work without negative consequences. Now, when September comes, I know exactly what to sow to help the soil recover before winter. The timing is crucial because the soil is often tired after the summer harvest. It's depleted of nutrients, the microbial life is weakened, and the structure can be damaged from frequent watering and cultivation. Planting the right cover crops now gives the soil a chance to rebuild itself before the frost arrives. Many people think cover crops work just by taking up space or adding organic matter when tilled under. While that's partly true, the real magic comes from their roots, which break up compacted soil, create channels for air and water, and help the soil ecosystem thrive. But here's the catch. Planting the wrong crop can actually make these problems worse. Hard soil, poor drainage, and an imbalance of nutrients can result if you don't choose wisely. From my experience, there are 4 popular cover crops that often cause trouble. White mustard, for instance, is heavily marketed as a universal solution. On paper, it seems perfect, but in practice, it can accumulate pests and diseases, especially for the cabbage family. I planted it repeatedly in the same area, hoping to improve the soil before growing cabbage, radishes, and turnips. Instead, flea beetles multiplied rapidly, disease pathogens built up, and my crops became weaker than ever. A neighbor had a similar experience. Her cabbage plants were yellowing early, heads remained small, and the soil seemed exhausted. Another problematic crop is winter rye. It grows fast and looks robust, but it can dry out the topsoil excessively. Rye roots act like a pump, pulling moisture from the surface layers and leaving the soil too dry for subsequent crops. I measured soil moisture under rye and compared it to nearby plots. It was consistently 20% drier. Tomatoes planted afterward struggled to establish strong root systems in the compacted and dried out soil. Oats are also often recommended because they are cheap and quick to grow, but they can create favorable conditions for soil pests like wireworms. After sowing oats, I noticed an increase in potato and carrot damage from these pests, which required treatments I usually try to avoid. It became a 2-season battle to manage the pest problem. Finally, perennial lupine is marketed as a nitrogen fixer, but it can turn into a stubborn weed. On one plot, it took over a quarter of the area in just 2 seasons, and removing it completely has been nearly impossible. Its root system is so strong that it suppresses other plants, demanding constant attention and labor. So, what really works? Over the years, I've identified 3 cover crops that genuinely improve soil health without these side effects. First is phacelia. I've found it to be a real lifesaver for tired soil. One big advantage is that it doesn't belong to any vegetable family I grow, so there's no risk of disease accumulation. Phacelia roots penetrate 3 to 5 inches deep, loosening the soil and creating channels for water and air. After a season with phacelia, the soil becomes noticeably softer, easier to work, and my tomato plants show less stress. I usually sow about 0.35 ounces per square yard for light soils and slightly more for heavy soils. Second is hairy vetch, a winter-hardy nitrogen fixer. It continues to enrich the soil throughout the cold months. A pound of vetch green matter can provide roughly 0.1 to 0.15 pounds of nitrogen to the soil. While it's harder to find in local stores, specialty seed suppliers usually carry it. The investment pays off. After planting hairy vetch, my potato yields increase by about 15% without extra nitrogen fertilizers. The third helper is oilseed radish, which works like a soil doctor. Its taproot penetrates deep, loosening compacted layers, and helps control nematodes and some fungal diseases. Oilseed radish also produces lots of leafy growth, suppressing weeds, and draws nutrients from deeper soil layers, making them accessible for the next crop. I plant radish on plots where I've had disease problems before, and after a season, the soil feels healthier, and subsequent crops grow more vigorously. I usually sow it from September 5th to 12th. Planting earlier can lead to premature flowering, while planting later may not allow enough growth before frost. Here's how I manage my September cover crops. The first week, I prepare the soil. I check which beds are free after harvest and lightly till the top 5 to 6 inches, just enough to loosen the soil without disturbing the microbial balance. Plant residues are collected and added to compost. Seeds are bought in advance, and I always check expiration dates, as older seeds germinate poorly. I measure out phacelia seeds, about 1.75 ounces for a small plot, which covers roughly 4 square yards. The second week, if the weather is favorable, I sow. I skip rainy days because wet soil clumps and can cause seed rot. If the soil is too dry, germination slows. I plant phacelia shallowly, about half an inch deep, hairy vetch slightly deeper, around 0.8 inches, and oilseed radish about 0.6 inches. The third and fourth weeks are for monitoring. I check seedlings every few days. If there is no rain, I water gently every 2 to 3 days, using a fine spray to avoid washing seeds away. Phacelia sprouts in about 5 days. Hairy vetch can take up to 2 weeks. Common mistakes include sowing too early or too densely. Too many seeds result in weak, spindly plants. Another error is ignoring what was previously planted. For example, sowing mustard after cabbage leads to disease buildup. Now I keep detailed notes about each bed's history. Proper depth is critical. Small seeds buried too deep fail to emerge, while larger seeds sown on the surface can dry out or be eaten by birds. I also make sure to maintain consistent watering. Assuming autumn rains will suffice often leads to patchy germination.